Hello, today I am back with graphing in all four quadrants. We're also going to talk about distance, and from distance, once we have the lengths, we are able to do perimeter and area. All of these things are part of the topic 2 and will be on the test. So the first thing that we started with is we actually began with these pages. And the key here is this. In 5th grade, as a 5th grade standard, they learned to use the coordinate plane, but they only dealt with the positives. Now we're going to deal with those negatives also. This line here is your x-axis. This line here is your y-axis. When you have those axes, they break your coordinate plane into 4 regions. These regions are known as quadrants. This is region number 1, and yes, they are shown with Roman numerals. I know a lot of kids have asked about that, and yes, that is how they are shown. This is Roman numeral 2, this is 3, and this is 4. And these are the quadrants. In each of these quadrants, if you look, we always start at the origin, which is right there, and then you move on the x-axis first. So if I move this direction, this is the positive direction, so there's x, so 1, 2, and then from there, so it's like a baby crawls, and then a baby walks, and then we're gonna go, so we went 1, 2, and then we're gonna go up 1, 2, 3, and that gives us this point. This point would have the ordered pair of 2, 3. Your x value, your y value. Both of these are positive in quadrant number 1. Now, that can be reflected over the y-axis. It just flips it over here, and that's all it means by a reflection. If I chose to go this way, so from my origin, I go -1, -2, and then up 3, I have reflected this point across the y-axis. This point is now our x value, which is -2, and our y value, which is still 3. So in the second quadrant, your x is negative, but your y is still positive. So our y, when it's this way, is positive. Our x, when it's this direction, is positive. Our x in this direction is negative, as is our y would be negative here. You can also reflect these points over the x-axis. So if I did that, let's go back to this first point. So this was 2, 3, so instead I'm going to still go out +2, but this time I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3. And this point is still +2 in the x direction, but now we have -3 in the y direction. So in quadrant 4, we have positive x and negative y. If I was to reflect this one over the x-axis, it would come down here. We would have -2, -1, 2, 3. So this point is -2, -3. So in the third quadrant, our x and our y are both negative. Okay, so that's how we've been graphing. We had these papers. You always have an ordered pair with x, y. We did some examples, and then some of the classes filled this one out and some didn't. From there, we moved into distance. The key with distance is if they are in the same quadrant, we're going to subtract. If they are in different quadrants, we're going to add. So the quadrants are really important. You have to know how to graph the points. You need to understand which quadrant it is in, and then you're going to be able to take the distance. So when you take distance, okay, and we have a few points here, so I'm just going to use these points here. If I look at the distance from here to here, all right, now some would say, well, we can just count the blocks. We are not counting the blocks because this is going to come back again when we are in, I believe it's Algebra 1, if not, it's Algebra 2. And at that time, these points will be slanted. So the students need to understand how to do the process so when the numbers get a little bit more difficult, they'll be able to do that. So to find the distance, when we look at this, we can see that our x value of 2 is not changing. Our x value is staying the same. Instead, our y value is changing. So what we do is we take the absolute value of this y value, which is 3, and we're going to take the absolute value of this y value, which is -3. And because they are in different quadrants, this is in quadrant 1, this is in quadrant 4, we're going to go ahead and add. The absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of -3 is also 3. And 3 plus 3 is 6. Now we can come up here and check, and let's see if it is 6 steps away. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that is true. It is 6 steps away. All right, now we can do the same thing for a different side. Okay, so let's look at this one right here. All right, if I was to look at this, I can see that their y value is being held the same. Our x value is what is changing this time. So again, what we're going to do, we're going to take the absolute value of the x, -2, the absolute value of the other x, which is +2. They are in different quadrants. Since they are different quadrants, we're going to add. The absolute value of -2 is 2. The absolute value of +2 is 2. And 2 plus 2 is 4. So that tells me this length is 4. Well, if you look at the design we have, you can see that it is a rectangle. So if I was to connect these, I can see that's also going to be 6. And if I connected these, it would be 4. So the other thing that we can do now is we can find the perimeter. So the perimeter is found by adding all the sides. A situation where you would have perimeter is if you're putting up fencing around an area. So if we were putting a fence around this, we are going on each and every side and we're going to combine those. So we'd have a 6, a 4, a 6, and a 4. So perimeter is 6 plus 4 plus 6 plus 4. This is 10, this is 10, and 10 plus 10 is 20. We don't know if it's feet, inches, centimeters, so we're just going to write 20 units. Another thing we can do is we can find the area. Area would be putting a floor in this. Let's say this is a building and we're going to pour a concrete floor. So we want to know this inside, so we're going to multiply your length times your width. So we're going to take 4 times 6, and that gives us 24. Again, we're going to use units, but because we've multiplied 2 of them, it's units squared. So once you are able to graph points, because we've already practiced absolute value, we're able to find the distance from point to point. And then because we are going to be dealing with polygons, we're able to find the perimeter and the area. So students might see squares, rectangles. You could see, take the perimeter of a trapezoid, of a triangle, many shapes. Area right now would only be with a rectangle and a square. All right, so I want to give you one other example because so far everything has been in different quadrants. That doesn't always happen. And I need to find, here we go, here's one. So if I take the ordered pair of -3, 4, and -3, we'll say 6, okay? So if we were to graph this, we're going to start at the origin, and we're going to move 3 in the x direction, so -1, -2, -3. And then we're going to move 1, 2, 3, 4 in the positive x direction. Okay, so there's our first point. Our second point is also at -3, but we are going to go up to 5 and 6. So let me go ahead and mark those on our axis. Okay, we can see these are both in quadrant 2. When they are in the same quadrant, okay, there's all of our quadrants again. When they're in the same quadrant, we're still going to go about distance the same way. So we have a 4 and we have a 6. We're going to start with the absolute value of the bigger one. So we're going to start with the 6. Okay, we can see the x value is staying the same. Both x's are -3, but the y's are changing. One is here and one is here. So absolute value of 6 and absolute value of 4. Because they are in the same quadrant, we're actually going to subtract. If we didn't, well, here, let's finish this first. The absolute value of 6 is 6. Absolute value of 4 is 4. 6 minus 4 is 2. So this says it is 1, 2 steps away. Otherwise, if we had done this with adding, 6 plus 4 is 10, and this is not 10 away from each other. All right? So when you are looking at points that are in the same quadrant, you will need to subtract. Otherwise, we're going to add all of them. And because when you subtract, we're not doing negatives yet, we want to make sure that the bigger number goes first. So 6, the absolute value of 6 minus the absolute value of 4. I'll show you this next page. So the other page that we're going to be putting in our notebooks is this one. The key when doing the real world problems such as this one, we were looking at parking lots and buildings, is to notice the key. So here it is 10 meters for each one grid mark. So we will walk through this together in class, and then we are going to actually do a few more. We'll do building 1, and then we looked at another example. This is all that is on the test for topic 2. So topic 2 covers, as a whole, will cover a number and its opposite, or a number and its opposite. It will cover putting numbers on a number line. So if this was 0, this is +1, this is -1. One of the things that we've really talked about is if counting how many tick marks are between the 0 and 1. So for instance, there are 2 tick marks. So this is 1 out of 2 and 2 out of 2. Or we can cut it in half again. This is 1 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, and 4 out of 4. So students should be able to put numbers in order on a number line, whether they are positive or whether they are negative. We have also talked about decimals. So this is 1/4, 1/4, fourth, so that's 25.25, like the quarter. This is 2 quarters, so this would be negative 0.5 or 0.50. And 3 quarters is 0.75 or negative 0.75. So students should be able to put numbers in order from least to greatest. We looked at the absolute value of numbers, so the absolute value of negative 3/4 is 3/4. And we talked about how this is the coat of righteousness, and when you have asked Jesus into your heart and you wear the coat of righteousness that Jesus gives us, we are always perfect, holy, and blameless, and positive. We could take the absolute value of 0, which is just 0. We could take the absolute value of 0.25, which is 0.25, 25/100ths. From there, they should be able to graph in quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is the origin. Each point, you always start at the origin. You go the X direction first, like a baby would crawl, and then you go the Y direction. And then we talked about distance. So we take the absolute value of our first number, we'll say 9, and the absolute value of the second number, we'll say 6. Usually we're going to add if they are in different quadrants. If they are not in different quadrants, then you would subtract. You could also take the perimeter, which is adding all the sides, or the area, which is multiplying the length times the width. And that is all of chapter 2. Thanks very much. See you again.